then the radio went off, and I heard this voice, and then the radio immediately came back on.
This is Touched by Heaven, everyday encounters with God, those moments when heaven and earth collide. And we see God, we see His hand reaching out to us, attempting to get our attention, inviting us into a closer relationship. Here we share stories of encounter with angels, divine intervention, prophetic dreams, visions, near-death experiences, big and little God incidents. I'm your host, Trapper Jack. Welcome. This is episode 116. We are not promised tomorrow. I can't not watch this movie. I can't not watch Heaven Can Wait. I love that movie, Warren Beatty. You see it? 1978. It's one of those movies, if I'm flipping by on television, it's like, I just stop whatever I have to watch that. Or as was the case a week or two ago, I was on my phone and I saw one of the platforms had it, and and it's free. Free's good. And I watch it. It's great. It's clever. It's funny. Warren Beatty is the quarterback of the Los Angeles Rams. He's going to take him to the Super Bowl. But he gets into an accident and he dies. Well, he wasn't supposed to die, but heaven made a mistake. Yeah, they pulled him out early, and he was supposed to live another 50, 60 years, and they blew it up there. So now heaven's going to work with this Joe Pendleton character, Warren Beatty, and find him a new body that he can get into, but it has to be fit enough because, after all, he does have to play for the Rams and take him to the Super Bowl. And he has this angel played by James Mason. James Mason, a wonderful actor. He's the angel Jordan. If it's meant to be, Joe. If it's meant to be, And of course, as it turns out, heaven can wait for Joe in another 50 or 60 years. It's a terrific movie. Love it. Okay, so I've watched that on my phone, and then this is when it gets a little strange or Touched by Heaveny, is that maybe an hour or two later, I flip on Turner Classic Movies, the old movies, and what do I find? It's a movie from the 40s that could have been titled Heaven Can Wait. Again, heaven has made a mistake. They make tons of them, apparently. And in this case, David Niven, I think it's a 1946 movie. It's a movie called A Matter of Life and Death. And the movie starts with him, the pilot of this bomber in World War II, but it's going down, it's being shot down. All the other crew have bailed out with their parachutes, but David Niven's parachute, well, it's been all, blown up and shot up or something, so it's useless, and he's going to crash and die. Or he can choose an alternative of dying, which is just jump out of the bomber and just splash into the ocean and die that way. So he decides to do that. He jumps out. Only, again, heaven makes a mistake. Somehow he gets lost in a fog bank or something. They can't see him, and he survives. He survives, and then he falls in love, and oh my gosh, well, heaven comes for him, and he says, well, no, I've fallen in love now. You guys messed up. So there's a court case in heaven. It was in all the papers. I hope you read about it. True story. Yeah. Anyway, so he pleads his case to stay, and of course, heaven, very accommodating, can wait because they messed up. Okay, so how is it I've seen these two movies just back to back? There's no coincidence to me. I'm going, is there something here? Are we headed to something? These movies are called fantasies, but can heaven wait or something? Well, then reality hits. Now there's a total shift. Over the next several days, things like this happen. I flip on an online homily, and I see the priest saying, well, we lost our parishioner Gary. He was only 49, but he suddenly died of a heart attack. And it's like, oh, okay. Or my wife and I, Elizabeth, we're out for a walk in the neighborhood, and we come across this wonderful neighbor we have that, how long has it been since we've seen you? It's been a year. Oh, my gosh. How is this possible? It was a year ago that the family had gone on vacation to the Middle East. Her husband had always wanted to go to the Holy Land, and they were just about to step into the Holy Land, and he died suddenly. It was shocking. It was tragic. And like the title of the episode says, we are not promised tomorrow. This is not something we get to negotiate, Those were fantasy movies here. Welcome to reality. We're not promised tomorrow, but we are promised something. So I want to go back to the promised land. This is where the lesson is today. It's over there in the promised land. There is a promise there. That's biblical, because I think we missed something again, unless maybe we look again through typology. I just love typology in the Bible because God just screams to us what's important. He does. The Old Testament is revealed in the New, and it's always an upgrade with Jesus. It's a reboot with Jesus. For example, Moses is a type of Jesus. He led his people to the promised land, right? As Jesus leads us to the promised land, heaven. In fact, Jesus and Moses were talking about this. Do you remember the gospel story about this one? It's called the Transfiguration. We get lost in the cloud in this one. We miss the conversation. We miss the typology. Because there's that cloud and the voice of God is heard. And we see this radiant Jesus. He's glowing. And who's with them? Who are those two guys? Moses and Elijah. What is that? And Peter's there going, should I build a tent? So, and Moses and Jesus are talking, and they're just glowing and radiant. And Moses is talking to Jesus about the upcoming Exodus, the one that's going to happen in Jerusalem. He's going to die on a cross, and he's going to go out ahead of us, and we then are to follow him, pick up our crosses, follow him, believe in him, so that we can end up in the promised land. So here we are right now out in the desert, wandering around. The Israelites were a type of us, but the upgrade is we have Jesus. But I think maybe something we miss in this typology, do we know every single person in that original Exodus, that original generation that left Egypt and traveled for those 40 years out there, every single one of them died before they stepped into the promised land? Every one of them, including Moses. They all died. And you know what's going to happen to us, by the way, before we step into the promised land? Die? Yeah, unless there's a second coming really soon, we're all going to die. Everybody wants to get to heaven. Nobody wants to die to get there. So here we are out here in this Exodus, wandering around. We're worshiping our golden calves too. We call them 401ks and porn, booze, whatever our vice is, and being disciplined, just like the Israelites were. It's the same story. It's the same story. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Anybody? Are we there yet? Because they didn't know when they were going to finally get there 40 years later. We don't know when our last day is. We don't know if we get an extra 50 years or if it's today or next week. We don't know, do we? We don't know. So I thought, while we're on this travel, and we're not walking, by the way, in our Exodus. We have better transportation.
Hi, Trapper. This is Joanie.
Hi, Joanie. What's happening?
I am in the car.
Is your car your office? You got the office car going here?
I get more bars.
The important thing is to hit bars whenever possible. Always stop if there are bars.
Yes, my life goes around bars. So I have more phone reliability in my car than where I live.
Okay. How'd you find the podcast?
A friend of mine, she sent me your link when you were talking about the Easter fire.
Oh, okay.
And we were both never heard of that before. Never heard of that.
And why is that?
Well, like you said, there's a publicity problem, marketing problem.
They got a marketing problem. Okay, so when you heard these stories, what came to mind for you?
A couple stories. One, I am a dental hygienist. I know, one of your favorite people, right?
Yeah, well, I had one on my dental hygienist was on the podcast, so absolutely.
Oh, well, it's a fascinating job, not about the teeth, but about the people underneath the teeth.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to hear their stories. And so this involves my dental job. I was working at a small office, and I had been there a year. Now, go back to a little bit of history. My husband, myself, I had a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old. So, just normal life. A dentist reaches out to me and wants to hire me. And his office is a little busier, but the salary was much better. And so I was interested, and I talked to my boss, and he was saying he couldn't match that salary because the office as I was at right now was kind of a small office, and he couldn't match that salary. So one day at lunch, I had a decision to make. Do I leave this job or do I go for the bigger salary in the new office? And there's nothing wrong with that. For some reason, everybody left the office at lunch that day. There was nobody hanging around. And I was sitting and I was praying and I was pondering. And the radio went off. And I heard this voice. And the voice said, "You have a track record here. They know you here. If something happens, they know you here. You have a track record here. They know you here. If something happens, they know you here."
What kind of voice are we talking about here?
It was like a male voice in my head.
And the radio actually physically went off before that happened.
Right, because, in a dentist office, you have that dental office music.
Absolutely. I worked at a radio station that provided many dental offices of music, so I understand. But it just went off. It just went off, and then you start hearing this voice. Audible, inner voice, what are you getting?
It's audible.
Wow.
I mean, I could hear it. And it was very clear, and it was very slow, and it was very precise. And it said that like 3 times.
You have a track record here. They know you here.
Right.
Okay.
And it said, if something happens, they know you here. You have a track record. Those are not words I would use.
Yeah.
You know?
And how long had you been there to this point?
It was probably a little over a year.
Okay.
Not a long time, but enough to know everybody and know all the patients. And then as soon as that voice said that, the radio immediately came back on. And I didn't touch a thing. So, after lunch, I went to my boss and I said, you know what, I'm supposed to be here. I'm going to stay here. No problems. Don't worry about it. And I went home that night to my husband and I said, for some reason, I'm just supposed to stay at this job. And I don't know why, but I'm just supposed to stay here. And so life goes on, my patients were so fabulous. About 6 weeks later, I had one of my favorite patients came in, and he was well overdue for his appointment, like 8 or 9 months. And I went and got him, and I said, where have you been? And he said, Joanie, he says, I got a new heart. I said, what? You got a new heart? Well, the whole appointment, and I took extra time with him because he was explaining to me his heart went bad. He got a heart transplant. He got a second chance at life. I mean, he was just bouncing off the walls. He was so happy. And I was so happy for him because he was one of my favorite patients. I had no idea this had gone on. I had never seen a transplant patient in my chair. So it was a good day. I went home that night, and after we put the kids to bed, my husband and I were talking, and I told my husband, wow, you should have seen this patient. I mean, and I said, if something happens to either of us, we have got to donate. We have got to do the organ donation thing. Less than 12 hours after that conversation, my husband was dead.
Oh, my gosh.
Now, my husband was 37, extremely healthy, a jogger, no illnesses, no symptoms. He got up the next morning, we were all getting ready for work. He went into the garage. I heard him go, oh my God, like he felt a pain. I thought he tripped on the dog. And he hit the ground, and I think he was dead before he hit the ground. It was a acute cardiac arrhythmia. And they say there's nothing that could have been done.
Wow. That's just wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a biggie. And my kids were, again, 3 and 4. So when we got to the hospital, the first thing I could say to them is, donate, take whatever you can take. We've just had the conversation.
Was somebody able to receive your husband's heart?
Well, the problem is if they die at home, we could only donate eyes, skin, and bones. That's why donation is so important, because they almost have to die on a respirator because the heart can't stop beating. They can't stop the circulation to the heart. Where he died at home, I just said, take whatever you can take, whatever is useful. So that's cornea, that's skin, and that's bones.
Okay, so they couldn't take the heart. It was too late for that.
Right. It was too late for that or any of the other organs. But it got me on a platform. So about 5 years, I spoke about it. I talked about organ donation because so many doctors and nurses don't want to bring it up when someone died. And I explained that it is the gift that just keeps giving. And when you're really dark and really low and really think you've never done anything good in life, there's a little light that shines and says, I did something right. I donated. I did something. I donated. So that was a powerful, powerful thing.
Obviously, that moment of hearing that voice was to put you in that place so that you could get that message and speak about it and the importance of it, because you're doing God's work when you're giving you're literally giving your physical self and saving lives and improving lives. as you did through your husband. But in terms of an experience, encounter, anything like that before or since?
No, no. I can add to that a little bit more, but I wanted to say, Trapper, I'm glad I kept that old job because they knew me there. The patients knew me. It was a small office, and they really got me through this. But I was just so glad I didn't quit that job.
Yeah, you weren't supposed to. You just absolutely were supposed to be in that spot for that moment.
But it also shows me that the Lord knows what's coming.
You bet
He said
it's all on the DVR.
He's in the future.
He's got his DVR all set up. He's going, who needs what, when? Let's see if I can make sure that person's there. And that's the point. Every one of us has our own purpose, and we're the only one that can do what we can do. We're the one. Yeah. Wow. Pretty cool.
So the other part of this is, so my husband died on October 13th, which is the Miracle of the Sun.
October 13th, 1917 was the Miracle of the Sun at Fatima, Portugal. Okay. Which was huge, huge event. Yeah.
Right. But that Christmas, this dental office gave me a gift certificate for a 1-hour massage. I think they thought I was stressed. Well, I've never had a massage. I have never had my mind on a massage. I went, but I was really nervous because I didn't know what to expect. And so I was talking to the massage therapist when she started, and I said, what started you to do this? Why are you a massage therapist? And she explained that she had a daughter that was very disabled, and her daughter died. And she said this was the way to fill her hands with love again. Well, that planted a very deep seed for me. I ended up going to massage school, and I was a massage therapist for 20 years.
Wow.
So it set me up. So I was a hygienist and a therapist at the same time. But it was so healing, Trapper. And every massage started with prayer, ended with prayer, and I gave Christ that hour. I said, Lord, you do with my hands what this body needs my hands to do. And it was very powerful, but it was a very good healing experience for me.
Yeah, you get some splashback on something like that with that kind of prayer and doing something for somebody else. You get it feels good for you too, doesn't it?
Yes. Oh, yes. And you can't be a mess on the inside and give a good massage. So it really healed me and got me unchecked, of who I was and what kind of a mess I was. Because this were some hard years. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, at that age? You were how old?
Yeah.
He was 37. What were you?
I was 35.
Okay.
And the kids were 3 and 4.
Damn, I can't imagine. That's just...
But the fact that I could, number one, didn't change jobs. The other is that the working with LifeNet and doing all the work with organ donation was huge. And then you have to kind of take a different path when something like that happens. And if I could get on a path for massage therapy, huge. So I just feel that was God's hand in all three things.
Absolutely. You obviously come from spirituality. I mean, there's something about you being open to this, that God would make a sound, a voice audible, that you would hear somebody else say something about massage therapy and you would go, and it just hits you in your heart in a way that you said, I got to do that too. So where does this begin for you? How does all this spirituality begin for you?
I was born in France. I was named after Joan of Arc. I was born in the city of Joan d'Arc. So that's how I got Joan. But I wanted to be named Bernadette because we went,
Well, one saint or another,
Right, exactly. But because Fatima and Lourdes was so big in the 60s, and being over in France, my dad did some home movies of going to Lourdes and seeing the people in the wheelchair and seeing the people on the crutches. And I just say I was born so Catholic. my being, I loved it. I love the Catholic Church. I love the rosary. I love the traditions. And I just think every day you could see a miracle, and either everything is a miracle or nothing's a miracle.
Right.
And when I would do my dental patients at the start of the day, I would say, Lord, let me be to them who you need me to be. and let them be to me who I need. So it was very intentional to listen to people and see, just be intentional. Just be on the outlook. The miracles are all over the place. And it's been a great way to live.
Obviously, Mary's been close to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the rosary. I don't have any special stories of anything special with her, but when my husband died and I was a single mom, I prayed a lot because she was a single mom. I mean, we don't know when Joseph died.
Yeah, we kind of assume that maybe when Jesus was in his 20s, because he obviously taught Jesus the trade of carpentry. You assume that anyway, somewhere along the way. We know he wasn't around during the public ministry, 30 to 33. So I think most people kind of assume 20s, maybe.
Mm-hmm. But she was still alone at the cross. And when your kid's hurt and, you don't have that other spouse there, it's double painful. To have Mary alone at the cross, that just says a lot right there.
Yeah. There were others there, but as people say, Jesus was very much alone on the cross, and Mary was very much alone at the foot of the cross. There's just their own independent
sufferings.
And you know that too, losing your husband. Yeah, you had family around, but you're the spouse, you're the wife, you're the mother. How
Yes.
alone did you feel?
You can't substitute the father. So, I pray a lot. I talk a lot to Mary. Yeah, she and I are close.
Good.
She and I are close. But I love your podcast.
Why?
It just hits home. It's your voice is very soothing, and I like your interest in the stories. But it's reaffirming that God exists. Because you don't see it on the news, you don't see it anywhere else. So it's great to hear other people have the similar stories. Yeah. It reaffirms the faithful.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. It makes us all feel much more sane.
What I've told you today, I don't think I've told anyone. People don't really want to know, or they're not interested, or I've told pieces of it. But when you put it all together, it was a very important time of my life, and I'm glad I paid attention. And it's weird how we don't share it. That's why your podcast is important, because it does give us kind of an anonymous voice, and some people may not take it, or some people do, but it's lovely.
Well, thanks for this, Joanie. Anything else we didn't touch on you'd like to touch on, or let's start with what's your closing remark, shall we say, in your faith journey? What do we need to know from Joanie today? What's the story?
Be silent and listen. I think we just have so much busyness. When the voice spoke to me, it was in the quiet. I mean, radio went off, so it was really quiet. But I just think we have to be silent and listen. And be accepting, receive.
And you're listening. I get a sense that you're always listening for those whispers.
Yes. They're easy to miss.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And so we have to be clear about it. I mean, we do wish he would speak louder and slap me over the head with something once in a while, but, we have to go quiet.
Beautiful. Well, thanks for this, Joanie. This has been a delight.
Well, you too, Trapper. I'm so glad to talk to you.
Thanks, Joanie. But to have that experience, that one moment again, that one moment, how often does this happen, that one moment in somebody's life, just a few seconds? It was a big moment, obviously, when radios go off and nobody's around and nobody else is there, and an angel or whomever passes on that message 3 times. Wouldn't it be great if we all got that just every now and then, just hey, by the way, somebody to turn off the sound, TV, radio, car noise, highway noise, whatever, and just say something 3 times so we got it. Wouldn't that be nice? Later, Joanie would also send me an email just going deeper into why she likes the podcast. I wanted to share this with you because I hope it's shared by many, and that is, she says, I always know I'm going to learn or relearn something with a new twist, that the end will be good, that there'll be a message that is clear and positive, and left with the fortifying knowledge that God the Father, is sitting on the throne and is in control. Amen to that. Amen to that. And with that thought in mind, this learning, relearning, and going back again to us out here on our new Exodus, following Jesus to the promised land, to heaven, how Moses is a type of Jesus. Well, there's something in the Old Testament. It's where is it? Where's the upgrade? Because it's always an upgrade from Old Testament into New Testament. Old Testament revealed in the New, right? So where's the Ark of the Covenant? Where's that incredible box they spent so much time in making, and that gold inlay and that blue veil that was wrapped over it and traveled in the center of these hundreds of thousands of people? It traveled right there in the middle, because inside was all that godliness. Inside were the commandments, the 10 commandments on the tablets. And the manna, that miraculous bread that fell from heaven, and that rod of Aaron, brother of Moses. He was the high priest. Where's the upgrade? And you just have to look to Luke chapter 2, and you see the upgrade. Right after the Annunciation, what does Mary do? She heads off to see her cousin Elizabeth. Has her Fitbit, because it's a long way. How many steps am I doing? It's like 100 miles she's got to travel. And where's she going? She's going to the hills of Judah. You can almost see Luke when he's writing this. You can almost see Luke writing, and he's got, where are my scrolls? And he gets out his scroll of what we call Old Testament. And he's looking there at 2 Samuel chapter 6, 1,000 years before. King David, he's traveling to the same place, those same hills of Judah, says right there. And then when Mary goes into the home of Elizabeth, what does Elizabeth say? She says, who am I, to have the mother of my Lord come to me? What does David say way back there 1,000 years before? How is it that the Ark of the Covenant can come to me? Let's see, what else here? How inside, in the womb of Elizabeth, how John the Baptist leaps. Look who's leaping back there at 2 Samuel chapter 6. It's David leaping and dancing in front of the ark. And how long does Mary stay with Elizabeth? 3 months. How long does the Ark of the Covenant stay there before being moved in Judah? 3 months. Luke tying it together. In fact, there's even a word Elizabeth is said to shout out, and David is shown to shout out. This Greek word that is used only once in the New Testament, in this, and only, 3 or 4 times in the Old Testament, and each time in the Old Testament, it's always surrounding the Ark of the Covenant. Where is the Ark of the New Covenant? Where is the upgrade? It's Mary. Within her, she is carrying the Word of God. Beyond the tablet, she has Jesus. And beyond that miraculous bread that fell out there in the desert, she has what was called, what he himself, Jesus, called, I am the living bread from heaven. And of course, he is the high priest, the Ark of the New Covenant. We just connect the dots, and Luke is helping us do that. There is your upgrade. All right. So, and with all that in mind, and that is one story, by the way, that is one story that is not on the CD, Mary, His Messenger. I purposely did that. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's just to say it now as a way of telling you that inside the CD are those kinds of connections. Mary's actually throughout the Bible. We just don't recognize it because we're not looking at the typology and how all these stories are connected. And so that's what the CD is aiming to do. It connects old and new, and how what is revealed, as well as some great stories like Fatima and Guadalupe and some things that maybe you have or haven't heard. But whether you love Mary and just want to hear it all together in one gigantic form, or you don't know Mary, and this kind of connecting the dots of how the Old Testament is revealed in the New, and everything is an upgrade, a restart, a reboot, if you will, in the New Testament, that's hopefully what is revealed in a CD like Mary, His Messenger. So you can come here to episode 116 of touchedbyheaven.net and find a link to it, or go to trapperjackspeaks.com. That'll get you there as well. All right. Hey, I still need your story. Your Touched by Heaven story. Just go to touchedbyheaven.net and contact me there. My Patreon shout out this week. Thank you so much. Isaac Hansen, supporting us on a monthly basis through Patreon. You can do that here also at episode 116 of touchedbyheaven.net. Or if you want to just go to patreon.com and search for Trapper Jack, that's another way of finding me there as well. But thank you for your financial support. It keeps it all going. All right. I will see you next week. Thanks so much for listening to Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. I'm Trapper Jack.
If it's meant to be, Joe, if it's meant to be.